Joining us right now, Mark Obenshain. He is the Republican nominee for Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Right here live in studio with your whole entourage and everything.
My entourage. Well, that would be my daughter/driver.
Right. Tucker is here, and she is making sure that I am nice to you, and we will be nice to you. But at the same time, Mr. Obenshain, you have a lot to answer for here as you're running for governor of of Attorney General. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Slow down.
Yeah, exactly. For Virginia. First of all, let's talk about the ticket in general. I know that you're independent candidates, but you all came out of the convention process. We've got Ken Cuccinelli, of course, the man who you would like to replace there as Attorney General. He's running for governor. You've got E.W. Jackson running as lieutenant governor, and you are the Attorney General nominee. Do you think that the convention process worked in this case? Do you have the strongest ticket for the Republican Party?
Well, look, I think that as we go forward and come out of this convention, each of us has our own strengths, our own weaknesses. I think over the course of the coming months, we're going to see those developed. Ken, I know very well, he and I were seatmates in the state Senate. He's going to be a great governor. He's going to take it to Terry McAuliffe during the course of the race. E.W. Jackson, I don't know as well. E.W. has been a powerful speaker around Virginia, and Virginians are getting to know him. And I think that I'm taking a message around Virginia, fighting for public safety, fighting for jobs and economic development around the Commonwealth. And I think folks around Virginia know me pretty well, and I think that we're going to have an effective message.
All right, and jobs and security, very big issues. But also, lately, for the last few months, one of the big issues that might involve your office is corruption and some of the problems that the governor is facing right now, specifically Star Scientific. You know all of the headlines. As Attorney General, how will you address these, considering he's your governor now, he's your party mate, he's the leader of the party in the state? Will you be able to objectively take up any investigation that you need to take up?
Well, the Attorney General's office has a role and an obligation in making sure that we have effective ethics laws in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're going to undertake a thorough review of those laws. The process is going to work its way through. I certainly am committed, and I think that everybody else involved in this process is committed to making sure we don't rush to judgment, but that we have a thorough review of the facts, the circumstances, and as a practicing lawyer, one of my functions with a lot of my clients is to engage in risk management, which means after the fact going back and taking a look at what happened and whether something was done wrong or not, figuring out how we can do it better. And I think that's a great challenge that we have going forward, is figuring out how we can do this better.
It seems like there is some split, particularly within the Republican Party, on a few issues. You were against the transportation bill. And this was something that really burned me when it came to the whole tax issue.
And a whole lot of grassroots conservatives in the state.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends out there who saw their taxes go up, and over in Virginia, and people began to wonder, even though you're running for AG and you're not going to be voting, obviously. Or obviously creating laws here, but can you see this ticket really looking to change a direction?
Well,
can you roll back the transportation bill?
Well, looking forward as to what we're going to do about transportation, my record's been clear. I've been for 10 years a stalwart in the fight for Virginia's taxpayers. I've always felt like there are plenty of folks who are going to be willing to raise taxes. There's a dearth of people who are willing to stand up regularly for the taxpayers, and I've done it, and I did it on the transportation bill. One thing, though, that we don't disagree on is the need for additional dedicated funds for transportation. And for years, I've been pointing out that we've got to treat it as a priority. And when, in years like last year, when we had a $500 million surplus but spent $0 of that surplus on transportation, it's hard for me to believe that we're making it a priority. That bill is passed, and I really don't see a realistic likelihood that it is practically going to get rolled back next year. And it is going to fall to the Attorney General and the next governor to make sure that those funds are, at this point, applied efficiently, that they don't go to line the pockets of big labor, that they don't go to $1 million bus stops a la certain jurisdictions in the northern quadrant of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But we've got to make sure that we're good stewards of the resources that we have and make sure that they're not squandered.
Mark Obenshain is our guest. He's the Republican nominee for Attorney General in Virginia. And, I read Jennifer Rubin's article just last week on you. She paints you as sort of the most moderate voice on the Republican ticket. Ken Cuccinelli, currently the Attorney General, he's seen as a pretty conservative guy. He immediately had a national profile almost because he led the charge against Obamacare and trying to fight Obamacare on behalf of Virginians. How are you different than Ken Cuccinelli? How will you perform your job differently?
Well, I think that as I look at the Attorney General's office, I think that there's strengths of a number of our former Attorneys General that I look to. And, for years I've said that my message is a message that I really try to connect with mainstream Virginians. And I believe that it is a mainstream message, one of keeping taxes down, one of making sure that our communities are safe, one of making sure that we limit the size and scope of state government. But for me, looking at the Attorney General's office, I look at folks like even Jerry Blouse, a long time ago, Democratic Attorney General, brought a sense of business-like approach and professionalism to the office. Jerry Kilgore and Jim Gilmore were great public safety attorneys general. And Bob McDonnell was great at rolling back regulations. Ken has been a warrior in standing up to and fighting the federal government. I'm going to focus on those things if and when I'm elected Attorney General.
And then what we saw, particularly with the Obamacare lawsuits, Virginia was, I believe, was one of the first states to file a lawsuit against Obamacare. But as of I think late May, there were about 7 states, Virginia included, that have essentially abided by federal law, and they've established an exchange. This is being reported by, I think, the Heartland Institute. Can you talk about that?
Well, Virginia has not set up an exchange. We are not going to set up an exchange at this point.
Well, if Terry McAuliffe wins...
Yeah, you're darn right. An exchange is right around the corner.
What will you be able to do as Attorney General to hold that back, if at all? You know what? I want that answer in just a moment, but we have to go to traffic, really. You get time to think about this one. We're joined by Mark Obenshain. He wants to be your Attorney General, Virginians. And Carrie Pickett from Breitbart News just asked you about what you can do to push back against the idea of setting up exchanges to accommodate the Obamacare law, especially if Terry McAuliffe wins the governor's race.
The General Assembly has set forth a framework, and maybe this is what what the Heartland Institute is referring to. The General Assembly set up a framework last year for figuring out whether we're going to expand Medicaid in Virginia pursuant to the Affordable Care Act. I oppose that. I think that it's the wrong direction that we need to go. We need to increase access to health care, but not through massive expansion of our Medicaid system. We have not set up an exchange primarily because the federal government's been able to answer even the most rudimentary questions about how it's going to work and how much it's going to cost the Commonwealth of Virginia. And frankly, until the federal government can figure out how it's going to actually implement the Affordable Care Act and how we're going to have to abide by it, it would be irresponsible for us to set up an exchange or, frankly, to expand Medicaid in accordance with what Washington would like us to do.
Speaking of exchanges, you had some contentious exchanges with your opponent, Senator Mark Herring from Loudoun, because you had a debate last week. How did it go, first of all, from your perspective? And did he break any of the rules? Did he draw any blood? Was he a bad guy in the debate?
Heck, as we're entering into this contest, I mean, this is an opportunity for us to lay forward our vision for the office and set the tone that we want for the course of the race. I went to the debate ready to lay out my vision for the next 4 years serving as Attorney General, one of making sure that our communities are safe, standing up to make sure that kids are protected, make sure that our older Virginians are protected, stand up against human trafficking, and for our economy in Virginia. Mark Herring came in there with a single-minded approach to bring a hyper-partisan attack mode to this campaign. I still don't know what he stands for other than project labor agreements for the extension of the metro, which would have cost an extra $400 million that would have been tacked on the tolls for people using the Dulles Toll Road. He and I had a high-profile fight last year over whether we were going to allow the Metro Washington Airport Authority to build the Silver Line extension with union-only labor in Right-to-Work Virginia at a cost of about $400 million extra dollars. And fortunately, we won that, and it's the commuters who are going to save, and Mark Herring was on the other side of that fight.
There is one other thing that Mark Herring stands for, and that it appears to be making Virginia look a little bit more like Maryland with regard to guns. I was very surprised to see his stance in wake of the Sandy Hook shooting. He was one of those politicians who wanted to make gun ownership and the background check in Virginia much more stringent. Let's address guns in just a moment, because that's going to be a big issue moving forward, and people in Virginia are very happy that they don't look like Maryland on that issue. We've got an election in Virginia coming up this November. One of the guys on the ticket for the Republican Party is Mark Obenshain. He's running for Attorney General. We just mentioned the gun issue. Carrie Pickett from Breitbart News is here. Go, Carrie.
Hey, so you created or proposed a law that would keep concealed carry permit owners or gun owners from having their names public to the to like newspapers. Anybody wants to access it.
Right, we saw that horrible thing that happened in New York after Sandy Hook. Basically,
Exactly.
in a nutshell, how do you differ on guns from your opponent?
Pretty much in every way. I happen to believe that the Second Amendment is one of those fundamental rights that is in the Constitution for a reason, and our self-appointed civil libertarians can't just go through the Bill of Rights and pick and choose which of them are worth protecting and which ones are not worth protecting. The Second Amendment is there. I'm committed to it, and we've made great progress over the course of the past several years in making sure that people who are not permitted already under existing state and federal law to own guns don't get them. We've improved our instant check. We have improved our database to make sure that mental illness is captured. We need to go farther in making sure that our current laws are enforced and not impose additional burdens on law-abiding citizens in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And Carrie, your mention of that bill that I carried this year that passed with a bipartisan majority, that was very important to me because, I don't believe that just because I or somebody else exercises our Second Amendment right, our right to get a concealed carry permit, we comply with the laws, that newspapers in Virginia or elsewhere ought to be able to go to the clerks of the court or state police and get a list with my name and address and publish it for all the world to see. I mean, that would be like going to DMV and getting my driver's license information or my Social Security card. It just is not right.
But the horrific events at Virginia Tech, though, are still in everyone's mind. I mean, that it was awful. What would have been the best way to prevent that from happening? I mean, would you be in favor of more armed people on campus, professors having concealed carry? What's the solution to stop another Virginia Tech from happening?
Look, I've got a son at Virginia Tech, and my wife is actually on the board of Virginia Tech. And last 2 years ago, I guess, when a police officer was shot at Virginia Tech, that was about 400 yards from my son's dormitory. And I'm very sensitive to that. And I would say that we have made huge strides since the Virginia Tech shooting in making sure that we capture mental illness in our instant check database, and we need to continue to make those efforts.
That's only for people who have seen a doctor. There are people with mental illness that aren't treated out there, and they're under the radar.
Yeah, well, we've got to, and that's what I'm saying is we need to make continued strides to make sure that the people who ought not, under existing law, have guns, do not have guns. And we need to promote mental health across the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have a lot of options without imposing additional burdens on law-abiding citizens in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
All right, we have to leave it there. Mark Obenshain running for Attorney General this November. And by the way, Senator Mark Herring, your Democratic opponent, he has an open door here. We would love to have him to talk about the issues. In fact, if both of you want to sit down for a segment and we could do a debate between the two of you, we'd be happy to moderate. That would be a blast.
Ooh,
in fact.
fight.